Girls with an awkward or introverted boyfriend or husband, how did he approach you? Story 1. I'm gonna speak for my girl here. I just messaged her on that dating app after we both liked each other. She was warned though. My profile said, "You want a bad boy? I'm bad at everything." And after 2 months, I've rejected one offer to meet up. We did actually meet. Never happier before. Story 2. We met at an engineering summer camp. They jammed us all into a dorm lobby for orientation. I was one of the last to enter the room and sat down on the only available couch space, which was next to him. He was struck with love at first sight. We exchanged a few brief sentences and then they turned on a movie and I fell asleep on his shoulder. I've fallen asleep on other random people's shoulders at other times in my life. I just fall asleep easily. I woke up deeply embarrassed and scurried off to my room. The next day, we naturally gravitated toward each other because we didn't know anybody else, and we hit it off from there. Being at camp made us both available for dating in a way that we wouldn't have been otherwise. The camp structure encouraged our forced socialization, and he was separated from his computer. And I was separated from most of my pastimes as well. If we'd gone to high school together, I don't think we would have started dating. Anyway, now we're coming up on our 11th wedding anniversary. We've worked out a pretty good system for mostly letting him be his deeply introverted self without making me feel too isolated. Story 3. I met my husband at a mutual friend's housewarming party one night. I had decided to leave or sneak away from the place to go home out of sheer boredom, so I told the hosts that I was going to Subway to grab food, or they'd have tried to make me stay. Keep in mind, this was about 10:30 p.m. in a not-so-great area of town while I walked down the dark street to get to my bus stop. Now there was a quiet guy from the party, the host guy's best friend. He decided while quite drunk that it would be a fantastic idea to run after me for a few blocks at full speed, to walk me safely to Subway because he was hungry too. So here I am being followed and chased by some rando drunk guy from the party. I'm getting ready to punch him if I have to, when he catches up and asks to tag along. Lol. We got to Subway, got food, and he walked me back to the party I wanted to leave, where we chilled in the kitchen for hours talking video games, anime, and other crap. We traded emails because he wanted to give me some anime downloads so we could discuss the series further. I still tell him that he's damn lucky I managed to decipher his terrible writing on that paper. After that, he would bus all the way from across the city just to pick me up from work almost daily and walk me home for 10 minutes. We were watching anime hell when he first kissed me like a sudden spaz and asked, "Are you happy now?" Come to think of it, he still never actually asked me out. We don't even know what would be considered our first date, really. It's nearly been 11 years now, though. Plus a kid. I wouldn't change one awkward thing even if he did freak the shit out of me at first. We're also both still terrible in social situations, but with each other, our awkwardness sort of cancels each other out. Sometimes. Story 4. I was a fishnet-wearing, metal-loving punk girl. He was in a band. A fun horror punk band that wrote songs about bad horror flicks. He was the keyboardist and was so very painfully awkward, out of place, and had very little stage presence other than a fake bullet hole to the head and a white lab coat covered in fake blood and a very out-of-place gothic shirt. I couldn't tell if it was ironic or not. Lol, it wasn't. I guess that left an impression on me. The show was a blast though, and I ended up buying a band tee that night. Fast forward 4 whole years and I came across his profile on a dating site. He stated right in his profile the band's name and I instantly remembered him. Here was this tie-wearing corporate IT guy. But I remembered this nerd keyboard player and thought, I have to let him know how much fun I had that night. It was a slow burn. It took us 6 months to meet as we both had very busy lives. Fast forward 4 more years and we both are now married and expecting our firstborn next month. Ladies, go for the nerdy guys. He's the sweetest, kindest, smartest man I've ever known. And I couldn't imagine my life without him. Story 5. I am the introvert here, so let me tell you how I was fortunate enough to land my partner, and how I am the freaking worst and luckiest person around. So, second year uni, I was recovering from an absolutely do-nothing relationship that I latched onto like a fucking limpet because I was suffering from moderate depression and had been for a few years. So 6 months after I had split up with my previous girlfriend, I was on a night out at the local rock bar with my housemates and I ended up having another episode. Was pretty drunk and started texting my ex. Being a general sap and a drain on everyone's emotions, I was, for that brief period of time, one of the most pathetic cretins on the face of this planet. So my now partner spots me drinking myself into a stupor and sending damaging texts and sits down next to me, whips the phone out of my hands and tells me to explain everything. I kept trying to usher her onto more fun things like the pool table and the dance floor while I sat in the corner and she was having none of it. Ultimately, the damage control sort of works, and I spend the rest of the night under supervision. From there, she takes me home, tells me to stop sending dumb texts, and then goes home herself. The next day, she starts texting me to check in if we don't see each other. Every day, she was making sure I was okay, and for the next 2 months, that was it. She arranged some movie nights at each other's just to keep each other company and talk about stuff. We were friends, and it just developed from there, really. and another night of heavy drinking allowed me to have the courage to actually see where my priorities should lie, and ultimately have the courage to do something about it. I am super fortunate to have her in my life, and although I feel I have a negative impact on hers, which I'm super guilty about, she's stuck around me for 7 years. I have done her so much wrong in that time too, and yet she still welcomes me home with a smile. She's my only friend, and I'd never have been any other way. Story 6. He slid me a note on his phone in the Notepad app. It said something like, "You want to go eat some food with me after this?" It was right in the middle of a math class lecture, and the professor was extremely controlling about having your phones out. This was to the point of yelling at you in front of the class or even kicking you out, which wasted so much time and money in my opinion. Anyway, she obviously noticed and freaked out, but I was too flattered to care. We kept smiling at each other the whole time she lectured us for having our phones out, and we eventually teamed up the rest of the semester as study buddies. He's been my best friend for like 2 years and boyfriend for 1. Story 7. I'll answer for my little sister's husband. I come from one of the loudest, in-your-face families you'll find. My little sister married a guy who, to my knowledge, doesn't talk. I'm exaggerating, but at every family gathering, he's armed with a book and he knows how to use it. How they met is my sister's car got infested with bees. She went to ask a guy friend for help, but he was like, "No thanks." Then the book guy put down his book and said, "I'll help you." She didn't even know his name. At their wedding, book guy's father gave them a taste. "We never thought he would get married. Truly, never ever. I'm not sure this is real, actually. Your mother and I never thought you would have a wife." This went on for an uncomfortable amount of time. My sister is really, really beautiful and really into video games, Dungeons and Dragons, and comic books. Nice pull, book guy. Risk bee stings for love. Book guy and dream girl are very happy together. When book guy proposed, he gave her a ring box with a Zelda character that said, "It's dangerous to go alone. Take this." Book guy works at a bookstore, and my sister, dream girl, is getting her PhD in physics. Story 8. I think it was more his best friend than anything. I had a date to my senior prom, but he canceled on me 3 weeks before. I already had my dress and was devastated. I sat with my current boyfriend's best friend, let's name him T, in physics class and told him about it. And T immediately lit up and said that K, my current boyfriend, had never gone to a dance and he was trying to convince him to go all out this year and experience it all. K was actually in 2 of my classes, and physics was one of them. So T pointed him out across the room and I realized I had never paid any attention to him before. I was like, heck yeah, and T got the wheels turning, and by the next school day, K had asked me to prom. We went on a double date as per T's suggestion to get to know each other better, and 2 weeks before prom I ended up making more moves than him, like holding his hand and initiating conversation. A week before prom, he awkwardly took me to a park and asked me to be his girlfriend out near a tree by the river. Had a great time at prom, by the way. We had our first kiss that night. I have a photo of us in one of those photo booths and it was super awkward, but I cherish the memory. We're still together and engaged 6 years later. Our anniversary is this May. Story 9. I'm a quiet extrovert, he's a talkative introvert. We were in the same school club. The first memory we have of interacting with each other is when he came over to tease me about my then crush. We gradually interacted with each other more as friends. I think he even initiated some Skype calls too. Then we had a study session, which had our first memorable checkpoint. I rested my head on the table and he started petting it. Out of reflex, I'm short and people like to pet my head, I put my hand on his to stop him. Then he held my hand without thinking. He got super shy afterward, refused to look at me, and it was really adorable. That might have ignited a spark in me. On the same night, my dad came to pick me up. My not yet BF walked with me and was frustrated that my dad was being a third wheel since we wouldn't be able to take the train together. Now that was a major hint if I ever saw one, but my dense as hell BF didn't even think much of it when he said that. As we grew closer on Valentine's week, he made a bet with me that if somebody asked me out by that Friday, he'd win the bet and I'd treat him to dinner. If nobody asked me out, I'd win and he'd treat me to dinner. He was very sure that somebody would ask me out, but as I expected, nobody did. Then we met for dinner that Friday and had a friend's date the next day, on Valentine's. To this day, he insists he only had the intention to go out on Valentine's as friends. Eventually, he finally realized he liked me. He didn't even have to confess or anything, because even my friends all knew he liked me before he realized it himself. I constantly pestered him with, "Are you sure you don't have a crush on me?" And his answer gradually changed from, "I'm pretty sure I don't," to, "I don't know anymore." He asked me to think it through properly, about formally getting together after my exams, but I knew I didn't have to take that long to decide if I truly wanted him to be my boyfriend. Story 10. It happened really organically. We had some friends in common and started talking because of them. I could tell he was into me because he wanted to be around me all the time, and I would always catch him staring. I had to stay in school until later some days, and he would always stay with me even though he could have just gone home. We started talking more and more during that time we had alone, and found out we had so many things in common. He got a lot more comfortable around me, so he would make jokes, put his arm around me, etc. A couple of months later, we were at a party and he said he wanted to talk. So we went to a more private place surrounded by these gorgeous roses. He was shaking and his heart was beating so fast before he told me he liked me and wanted to be with me. Then we kissed for the first time and have been together for 4 years now. Story 11. Shy guy here. I accidentally told someone at the summer camp where we worked that I had a crush on her. Of course, the person I told was a loudmouth, so I figured I would get to her and tell her first. It was amazing. The level to which my anxiousness subsided for fear of her finding out from someone else after my words were all twisted up and misconstrued. To my surprise, she was obviously immediately interested, even though we had never even spoke before that. She thought it was cute that I needed to tell her myself and make sure that I told her the right way, with an explanation of what happened. She interrupted me while I was explaining and said, "Yes, I get it. We're going out now." Oh, wow. She did happen to hear from 2 people later that day that I was telling everyone how much I liked her, which wasn't the case at all. She just told them, "Yep, I know. We're going on a date tonight." She still gives me butterflies. Been together for 10 years and married for 5. Moral of the story. Put aside shyness. Honestly, it's ridiculous. Be honest and be true to yourself. Story 12. I'm the guy, not the girl, but she, in fact, approached me. I was sitting on the train at the back of the carriage when I saw her come in. She looked as if she was going to sit at the front. Almost all the seats were empty, but I saw her look up the back and she appeared to change her mind. She walked all the way down the carriage and then sat in the seat in front of mine. At this point, I was wondering what I should do. I normally don't talk to anyone, but there were only about 5 people in the carriage, and she'd walked past 10 empty seats to sit in the one in front of me. While I was still wondering whether I should talk to her or not, she turned around and started talking to me. We've been married for about 12 years now. Story 13. I met my boyfriend through a friend. A bunch of us were hanging out in an arcade-themed bar, and she brought a few friends along, including my now boyfriend. I got tipsy pretty fast. I rarely drink, so it doesn't take much, and started spouting comments like, "How tall are you?" 5'8". That's the perfect height for me. And where do you work? Midtown? Oh man, we'll clearly have to hang out again since we'll obviously run into each other again. It was awkward and embarrassing, and I never do this. Then we go to a karaoke bar, and he and I do a bunch of fun duets together. When it's someone else's turn to go, we're hanging out on the karaoke couch and kind of leaning into each other, almost cuddling. He finally asked me out at the end of the night, but said he would have been too much of a wuss if I hadn't given him all those hints. Even by karaoke, he still had to ask my friend while I was in the bathroom, "Do you think she would go out with me?" My friend pretty much slapped him upside the head. Story 14. Freshman year of high school. We were both in the school musical and got paired as a couple in one scene. I'm terribly awkward and completely oblivious to anything. He asks for a good luck kiss in opening night. I kiss him on the cheek. 2 years later, we were both in the fall play. We were cast as the mother and father of the lead character. After looking at the cast list the first time, he commented, "Looks like we're a couple again." A few weeks later, he puts his arm around me during rehearsal. We had gotten friendly, but not much more. A few weeks after that, at the marching band banquet, he wanted to sit with me. I still didn't get the hint. By the end of the night, we had a very short conversation in which we mutually agreed to start dating. Once the drama teacher learned that we were a couple, she told us that we were not allowed to break up. She meant not breaking up during the play so we wouldn't cause unnecessary drama. We took it at her word. It's been over 15 years since that fall, and we are still together. Story 15. Believe it or not, Craigslist helped us get together. It posted an ad, and I responded to it, and we met up like 2 weeks later after talking a lot through text messages. The most important thing that helped him was he didn't ask for a picture until right before we met. We met up, went for a pizza, and I promptly wrote him off as uninterested in me. 2 days later, he texted back and asked for a date number 2. Then date number 3 a few days after that. 2 years later, we moved in together, got married a year after that, and this year we're celebrating our 4th wedding anniversary. Talking through text helped us get started because he was able to open up and talk to me, whereas in person it took months for him to warm up enough to talk in full sentences. Story 16. We met in high school due to working at a summer camp together. One day he texted me telling me about a girl he liked. I texted him back and told him to go for it. He said he didn't want to be weird or get turned down. I told him to tell her and stop being dumb. He said he didn't want to make it weird. I responded with an, "Okay then." He texted me back almost immediately and said, "It's you." We ended up dating for a few months, and I broke up with him because we wanted different things at the time. After a year, we were back to being friends, since we still worked at the same camp together. A little over 5 years ago, we basically had the same exact conversation over text. He kept telling me he liked a girl, and I told him he should just tell her then. He kept saying he didn't want to be weird or ruin it, and I told him he would never know if he didn't try. He responded the same exact thing. It's you. We've been married for over 3 years now, and I still make fun of him for how he told me he liked me. Story 17. My husband had major social anxiety when I first met him. I'm an extrovert who used to be painfully socially awkward and shy, so I've always gravitated toward super shy people because I understand how it feels. We were both at the same party and I had seen him around a few times and thought he was cute. I pulled him out of the corner he was awkwardly standing in, looked him in the eye and said, "You're gonna hang out with me at this party." I soon realized how unbelievably funny and sweet he was, and we hung out the rest of the night. 9 years later, we've been married for 6 years, and he's learned that people love him, and he has opened up socially so much more. Story 18. We both worked at a hardware store when we first met. He only worked on weekends because he had college classes during the week. He would bring his binder of Yu-Gi-Oh cards to work and go through them during his lunch break. He always got weird looks from the other employees. I remember the first time I talked to him, he asked me to switch my Saturday off with him because it was his dad's birthday, and his family was doing a big birthday celebration for it. I agreed to switch, and he gave me the biggest and best hug ever. After that, whenever I'd seen him in the break room, I'd be sure to ask him to tell me about Yu-Gi-Oh. I played Dungeons & Dragons every Sunday with my friends at that point, so I understood what it was like to be viewed as a weird person by coworkers. Soon after, whenever he'd come in during the week for his check, he'd stay and talk with me for a good couple of hours. One day when I asked him about his upcoming schedule, he wrote it down for me and then included his phone number on the back. We've been together for 14 years and married for 10 this November. Story 19. My husband and I both worked for a grocery store. I worked in the bakery and he worked in the meat department. Our departments were adjacent to each other, and I noticed him looking at me quite a lot, and I, of course, was looking as well. I approached him once or twice to chat, but he seemed kinda ignorant, and just gave me short one-word answers, so I thought maybe I was wrong. However, he later messages me on Facebook telling me how familiar I looked, etc. The rest is history. We married 3 years later and are still happy. He later admitted to me that I did not look familiar, and he just wanted an excuse to talk to me.